Hey everybody, Jake Perez here with Onward, my weekly show dedicated to helping ordinary people live extraordinary lives. You can catch me live right here now on Thursday nights, 7 p.m. Central Time, as I speak with some of the world's most interesting people about a variety of topics, all dedicated to helping you change your life forever. My guest on the show tonight is both a good friend of mine and my pastor. He is also the first repeat guest on the Onward show. Back in episode 5, he was here to talk about the power of prayer. Tonight, however, he's back to talk about a very different but super interesting topic as well. You see, we all have them, we all want them, or we're running away from them. Of course, tonight we're here to talk about relationships. Pastor Terry Darnell, welcome back to Onward, man.
Good. It's so nice you to introduce me as one of the most interesting people in the world. Never viewed myself as that. It's great to be here. Look forward. What an important topic this is.
It really is.
Relationships either make our life better or they make them miserable.
Yeah.
So it's very important.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like I already said, I think this is one of those topics, that really affects everyone, right? I mean, everyone either they do have a relationship, or if they don't, they want one. Maybe they're single and they're looking, or maybe they've been hurt by relationships and they're like, no more of that, right? I don't want to deal with that anymore. So, I mean, one way or the other, it's a topic that really kind of resonates with almost every person, right? So I do want to shout out real quick, and the inspiration for this show kind of came. I've already shared this with you, but a new friend of mine who I'm teaching history with right now, Buddy Charity. Shout out my brother, Buddy Charity. I just gotten to know this guy this year teaching history with him, and this was kind of really. I'm actually just starting a whole series on, a little bit. Inspiration from you, Terry. You do you teach in series at church, and you do a great job with that. And I guess that was in the back of my mind. But so Buddy and his wife, they've been married 34 years, and he talks about her, and they have in a good way, and they have a great relationship, and and so I asked him one day, I was like, man, you've been married 34 years. I was like, you still like her, huh? And so, yeah, I like her, man. Things are good. So I've been asking him at school, like, when we have time to talk about this relationship. And, of course, you and Tracy are not that much different, right? I mean, you guys have been married 34 years. And I mean, I know you guys still like each other. And, I just, there's two different perspectives. I mean, one, you've got your own successful relationship background, but I know you've also worked with, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of couples over the years, doing some marital counseling and all that kind of stuff, right? So welcome, man. I'm glad. It's a super important topic, and I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, so Tracy and I, we're going on 32 years, and just so you know, we got married at 15. So no, but not much after we were married. We're 20 years old, and I consider myself fortunate because we just jumped in, and we've known each other since we were 12. And when you asked me to do this, Jake, I was trying to narrow it down because, I mean, honestly, you're doing a relationship series. There's so many things that are key, that are vital in relationships, but I think there's probably 5 or 6 that make it break it.
I love it.
And so whenever you want to lead it, or you want me to start off, or how you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just the talk show host. I'm just here to ask questions, man. People who know me personally know, I've been in relationships most of my life, but I've tried pretty hard at them, but I haven't had all the success in the world. I've struggled a little bit, and so I'm here. I'm just here taking notes, wanting to. I mean, being honest, I want to know how to improve my own personal relationships in my life, but at the same time, I know that it's a very important topic that I want to bring to the world through the show. So I mean, I'm just the talk show host, man. You're the expert, and I'm here taking notes, brother. So You've already said there are 5 things. Let me back up just a little bit before you jump into it, and I guess I was also thinking about it in this context as well. I did some reading and some research before this show, and I really think that I read somewhere that 34 marriage divorces during COVID are up 34%.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how accurate that is or what, but I know that the divorce rate's already somewhere around 50%, and the people who are staying married, I don't know how much they like each other or don't like each other or what, I don't know. But so in that context, I think marriages, relationships are under more stress, more strain right now than ever. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. It's interesting. I've done marriage conferences really all over the United States, and
Mm-hmm.
so when I started years ago, what I did was I asked people. I said, "Hey, just a show of hands, all the couples here, how many of you would like the marriage that your parents had? How many of you would like to emulate what you saw growing up?"
Mm-hmm.
And at first, I was shocked. Now I expect it, but 80% of the people at the first one I did said they did not want the relationship that their parents had. And maybe
Huh.
their parents stayed together. So they were there. They were on it's one thing to know you want something different. It's a totally another thing to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what they were doing. But yeah, as far as, I think with COVID, think about it. We're telling people they can't go out, but liquor stores are open, and now you can drive by and get it and drive home. And there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of dynamics, when you're stuck in the house with you normally go to work, and so there's a lot of dynamics there. So I would think that COVID's putting extra stress in a lot of areas. So sure, the
Mm-hmm.
relationship as well would have to
Mm-hmm.
fall into that.
Sure. So I've got lots of questions that I'll just probably bring up throughout our discussion this evening. But and I don't think I'm going to start with those. I'm going to let you start. You said there are basically 5 or 6 items that you feel like are going to kind of make or break a relationship, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. I try to be very simple. The first thing starting out that a lot of people get wrong is, it's essential to marry the right person. We're talking about romantic relationships.
Yep.
It's very important that you choose the right one, and that's
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very simple. But let's face it, many times we get emotionally attached to people. We're
Mm-hmm.
attracted to people. We feel some sparks.
Mm-hmm.
So we dive in. The problem with that is the sparks eventually go out, and especially if you start fighting. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just put some things together here, but I always encourage people to go through some premarital counseling, because a lot of times I'm meeting with couples and I'm like, goodness gracious, did you ask each other anything before you got married? They didn't talk about finances. They didn't talk about sex. They didn't talk about what their family of origin was like. They didn't like. I don't.
Right.
They talked about. They just had fun, right?
Yeah.
Simple things like, what do you want in life? And
Mm-hmm.
I was meeting one guy, and he wanted to be a missionary. Wanted to be a
Mm-hmm.
missionary to Africa. I'm like, well, you need to marry somebody that has the similar aspirations. If they
Right.
don't leave Texas or Colorado, that's kind of a bad deal, This is
Mm-hmm.
funny. I had one couple, and he wanted to live out in the country in a trailer, and she wanted to live in the city. Well, that's you're going to have to give and take there, but it would probably
Yeah.
be better for them if they'd have talked about that before. But
Yeah.
just
You know what? Can I just stop you real
yeah,
quick there? I mean, I think already you brought up some great points, right? It's really easy when people are in a dating relationship. You go out to eat, you see movies, you go do fun things, and you're not paying bills really together. Maybe one person has one thing in mind about how they want to live, and the other person has something entirely different. And you might feel that spark, you might have the love, or whatever feelings there might be. But
yeah.
you're right. If you don't put that stuff on the table and sort through a lot of the nuts and bolts, man, it can cause some problems, huh?
Yeah, eventually you will have to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you think about it, when you're dating, it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get married, you start working, you have to pay bills, their
Mm-hmm.
kids come along, there's extra stress. And
Mm-hmm.
so things you could get around when you were, younger, or when you were in the first part of the relationship, now you have to meet them head on. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess my point is that every relationship requires work. There's no 100% perfect match, but
Mm-hmm.
man, you can eliminate a lot of drama, by doing that. As a matter of fact, I have a friend of mine. He's in California. He works for an
Mm-hmm.
organization, and he does all their premarital counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And 45% of the people they take through this course decide not to get married.
Huh.
And he tells them, you can thank me later. But
Right.
take them through questions. Have y'all talked about this? All this stuff, and they just decide, what, this isn't a good idea.
Huh.
And so of course a lot of people just jump in. I got married when I was 20 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
of course we knew each other. We knew since we were 12 years old. We knew we
Mm-hmm.
had similar faith and things, but no one offered us premarital counseling. We just jumped in.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
so it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this, and when all these online people meeting online, getting married started happening, I don't know, probably 10, 12 years ago, it really hit in.
Yeah.
And it's very, very interesting. Do you know that people that meet online through these dating sites,
Mm-hmm.
they have a 25% greater chance of staying married? So if the national divorce rate's about 50, they're at 25.
Yep.
And because
Huh.
the reason why is you put all this stuff into a computer, and it's trying, before you even meet them and there's an attachment, they've
Mm-hmm.
already identified 6 or 7 key things that are a good fit.
Huh.
So then you just have to say, okay, is there an attraction and things like that? But let's see, what we do is we go out and find a good looking guy or a good looking lady, and we're like, hey man, going
Right.
pretty good. So I really think, and it's not that you can't make it.
Mm-hmm.
My pastor, Brother Francis, always said, "There's no such thing as the right person. Anyone can be the right person," and
Hmm.
that's very interesting. You
Mm-hmm.
can come, and you can. Well, think about it. Some many different cultures. They match the marriages, and they
Mm-hmm.
have low divorce rate, but that doesn't mean that they're happy. It's that their culture, many times, it's forbidden on to divorce. But
Sure.
I think a lot of the problems could be prevented if we just were a little bit more careful about who we decided to marry.
That's really interesting. I like what you're saying about, when people are getting matched up, whatever the dating sites are, if they're using, different measures. And I'm super interested in numbers, right? I'm kind of a numbers guy on things. And I wonder, your buddy who has that course where the premarital course where 45% people decide not to. I wonder, I don't know if you know, but I'd be fascinated to follow up and find out with the success rate, the 55% who goes through with it and gets married. I wonder what the success rate is there. Do you have any idea, or maybe we could find out? I'm pretty interested.
Yeah, I would, but I guarantee you it's going to be pretty high,
Yeah,
because
yeah, I would think so.
we and I don't, some of that's is hard because, like, I'm thinking how many people I've married, and
Hmm.
and uh, it's hard to keep up with people when they move out
Hmm.
of state and things like that.
Hmm.
But when you've addressed most of the important issues, it
Hmm.
really gives you a great chance for success,
Sure.
because you've talked about the big things that they're really going to be catastrophic if you can't, figure those out.
Right. Okay, so you said that you have, for those of you just joining us right now, thank you guys for hanging out with us here on this Thursday night. I'm talking with Pastor Terry Darnell of Family Life Church in Sugar Land, Texas, and we're discussing relationships tonight. It's something that everybody, either you're in it, you've got one, you want one, or you're running from one. It kind of affects all of us. And Pastor Terry is basically sharing 6 things with us that he feels can help people be much more successful in their relationship. So, are you saying number one? You just said you thought it was very important to choose the right person. Is that your number one on the list, Terry?
It is, yes.
Okay. All right. I'll let you jump back in, and I just want to clarify that a little bit for
And
everybody.
there's a book. There's a married couple, kind of fun, marriage gurus.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, they have the same name, Doctor. They're both doctors, Dr. Les and Dr. Leslie Perez.
Okay.
2 R's and 2 T's, and they actually wrote a book that's really good. It's called Saving. What's it called? Let me see here. Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. And they take you through a lot of these things to really ask these questions. Save the marriage before it gets started. Answer the questions, find out what it is, so that you have a better chance of success. And number 2 is, it's again, this is just my perspective, but I put down celebrate your differences. Celebrate your differences. And here's the thing, what's really interesting, we're always, when we're trying to find a partner, a spouse, a girlfriend, boyfriend, we're almost always attracted to someone that's different than us. So for example, I'm a type A person. I'm probably talk too much and all that. Well, Tracy is the polar opposite. She's an introvert. She doesn't talk much. She's totally opposite from me. But what happens is, they say before marriage, opposites attract. And as time goes by, opposites attack. And so the things that drew us to that person, later on, they bother us because we want them to answer questions just like we do, solve problems like we do. And so by celebrating, I'm just saying, if you're 2 people are exactly the same, one isn't necessary, right? And so it's like just really celebrating those differences instead of getting to where, man, that really bothers me. I wish they would do that differently. They're the same person when you married them. It's just that now times have changed, and you would like for them to do that. And I was thinking there's 3 or 4 categories about celebrating differences. First of all, there's personality differences, and most people probably know the 4 basic personality types. And you probably married somebody that's different than you. There's gender differences, a lot of differences between the gender. There's differences in how we were raised, like family of origin types. So one might have been raised in a rich family, the other one a poor family, a two-parent family, a divorced family, and then socioeconomic differences. Really, somebody was raised impoverished. How they see money and how it is so different than somebody who never had any needs growing up. So that's a few, but I think it's very important.
So this is very interesting, and we've got a lot of people watching right now, and Monica, saying, celebrate your differences, right? So good. And I mean, I know there are 6 things to get through, but I feel like we could just talk about how to celebrate your differences all night long, almost, right? I mean, there are all kinds of differences, right? There maybe we like different kinds of food. But I'm getting into like the nuts and bolts, right? I mean, because when you get married, you're gonna have dinner together. You're gonna sleep together. I mean, how do you reconcile some of these differences? Some are going to be bigger than others, right? I mean, if we're talking about, how we spend money, as one might be a free spender, the other might be a saver. Another thing I'm very interested in is how do we handle bedtimes? What if one person's a night owl and the other one likes to go to bed really early? I mean, could you talk to that a little bit? I mean, what advice would you have for couples? They love each other, but they've got so many differences that they're trying to reconcile.
Well, I think some of them are biological, and it's just the way it is. So God gave you the personality you have. And Tracy and I, that has been a problem for us. We had to work through. And I think the greatest thing is really understanding what the problem is. The problem isn't necessarily the other person; it's that you're different. I'm not better; she's not better. So things like if we have a discussion where let's say we get an argument, and especially when we're in the early years, you
Mm-hmm.
know, well, tell me what's wrong. Well, tell
Mm-hmm.
me what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the way she works, she needs to think about it for a few hours. She needs to process things. Me, I can just rattle a bunch of stuff off, and some of it's good and some of it's not, But appreciating the fact that if we have a disagreement, I just can't pressure her. I have to let
Right.
her see herself, and then we come back and talk about it. Um,
Yeah.
so that's another thing too is her family of origin was different from mine, and I don't want to do too much, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they didn't have as much as they needed, the kids, and or something. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to be very careful. I don't want to say
Sure.
anything or family or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
so when we got married, like I'm like, hey, you're spending too much on the kids,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he wanted to make sure that they had everything that they needed. And
Mm-hmm.
so once I understood that, see, we get mad because of what's different instead of trying to figure out, okay, why is it different?
Hmm.
Why do they feel this way?
Hmm.
I guess relationships are you got to put your big boy pants on, and kind of. But so many times we're fighting about things, and we're not even fighting about the real issue. The real issue is, well, why are we different?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not right, you're not right. Why are we different in this area, and what do we need to do? Because once I understood some of that
Mm-hmm.
about Tracy, we never
Mm-hmm.
had an issue about that again. I understood.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what
Right.
was going on.
I love that, man. So in reconciling the differences, we may not change each other's perspective or whatnot. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But you feel like it's one of the ways to do that is to put effort into understanding where your partner's coming from, understanding their perspective on it. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe so. And you know, I really started learning more about marriage, and it helped me retrospectively
Mm-hmm.
when we started our church, and we had all these young families. Some of them were
Mm-hmm.
having marriage problems, and I had to start teaching this stuff. So I had to
Right.
start reading books, going to conferences, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's amazing what an expert can teach you in 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Someone that's literally counseled with 500 couples, and all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden you realize, okay, we're not different, we're not strange, we're not weird, we're just experiencing normal problems. And this is so important because many people think, I'm just gonna get out of this relationship and go to another one, but your new relationship has all these things too. I
Yep.
mean, there's going to be differences, and so it's always better to stay and work on what you have but actually when you jump ship, then you have more baggage, and then you got two people with baggage coming in. But yeah, celebrating the differences instead of just getting to where you can stand them, really celebrate them. No, I appreciate that you're that way. I appreciate that you see that different than me, because
Mm-hmm.
my view may be limited, and you're helping to really, we're supposed to help uh, round each other out. And
Right.
Tracy, she softens my edges, you know
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and really helps me in that area.
So one of the questions I had for you, I mean, I guess it's a good follow-up question right now, but I think when we're talking about celebrating each other's differences, that kind of gets me off into thinking a little bit about, couples have a tendency to blend, and you said Tracy kind of softens your edges, and we do over time become like our partners a little bit, but how important in terms of celebrating differences would you say maintaining individuality? How does that tie in, and how important is that in a relationship, or is it important?
Well, yeah, it is. And we're always individuals, and we
Hmm.
respect each other,
Hmm.
but we also have to come together as one to make
Right.
decisions, to live life, to parent. And so I'm never, here's the thought: in a relationship, and this is common, the stronger personality sometimes can begin to dominate the relationship,
Hmm.
and the more mild one just kind of, and you see it both ways. You see a couple, and the ladies just kind of dominating the man. I mean, you see it, right? She's dragging around, telling him what to do. And then you see it the other way.
Yep.
And neither way is right. If the only way you can get the potential, both people can reach their potential, is if both individuals are respected, even though they've come together to unite as one. They're still individuals.
Sure. Okay, good. So basically you're going to have to respect each other's individuals. You're going to have to appreciate, figure out, understand your partner's perspective, and not only appreciate their perspective, but celebrate their differences from you. That's good. I like that. All right, moving on with number 3.
So again, this is the big one, communication. This is the monster in the room, the elephant in the room, but communication is the foundation of every relationship.
Okay.
I mean, whether it's with your kids, romantic, even at work, you've got to be able to communicate. And for some reason, male and female, they just struggle to communicate and at times. And but the quality of our relationship is going to be determined directly by how well we're able to communicate. And I've been married 31 years, and sometimes Trace and I will talk about something, and I'm all happy because I think it's decided. And then later call me, she's like, "Where are you at?" I'm like, "What do you mean? Where am I at? We talked about this. You said you were going to be here." I'm like, "Well, I thought you said." In other words, we talked around the topic, but we never said, "Okay, at 3:00 today, we're going to meet here and we're going to go to a movie or whatever." We kind of left it open ended a little bit. And but man, communication, and it's very interesting. Most of the people that come to my office for counseling, is very, very interesting because I end up playing, a mediator between them. It's like they're scared to tell each other how they really feel. And I kind of feel like a kid. I have to, okay, so you feel like this, and how do you, it's like and I was like, why didn't you just tell her that? Well, I don't want her to get mad. And, so that's which brings us to a point. For there to be good communication, there can't be fear of repercussions for being honest. Now, guys, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. It's one thing to say, well, I felt like that when you did that, but, I'm not talking about being honest about, some things we shouldn't say, but about the things that are important in the relationship, being honest about how we feel and things like that. But, one expert I looked at, he says there's basically 4 levels of communication.
Okay.
And most people never get beyond level 2. So level 1 is small talk.
Okay.
Small talk is, hey, what's on the schedule today? Who's taking what time the kids have to be picked up? That's kind of like roommate level, right?
Sure.
And the next one is thoughts and opinions.
Okay.
Thoughts and opinions. So, hey, where do you want to eat lunch at? And by the way, that can be a dangerous question in a relationship. Where do you want to eat lunch at today? You also Italian. No, but anything but Italian, So thoughts and opinions, what we think and what we're feeling. And then it gets to opinions and convictions.
Okay.
So opinions and convictions. And that's where you're starting to get somewhere. It's not, it's my convictions. I feel strong about this. And then the 4th level is emotional intimacy. And emotional intimacy is when you're cutting through all the garbage. And, most couples, I tell most couples, your marriage is not near as bad as you think it is. You're just not communicating, And they say, well, how come when we come to your office, we feel so good, but by Wednesday, we don't feel good? I'm helping you communicate. I'm acting like a moderator. And so you've got to grow up a little bit, mature a little bit, and you've got to, you can't be scared to have a conversation,
And don't you think, I think it's maybe obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. I mean, don't you think men and women probably communicate differently?
Absolutely. And Jake, there's a tremendous book on this, and it sounds funny. And I don't know. I was at an airport one day and I saw this book and I bought it, and it's called "Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti." And I loved it so much. They're in California. I flew them out to our church, and they did a conference on it. And the whole premise of the book is like this. It's very important. Lady, when you look at a plate of spaghetti, all the noodles are intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
That's how women communicate. Everything touches everything. But men, it's like looking down on a waffle, and men stay in one box at a time. Like if you're having a conversation with a man, if he says, I want to talk about finances, and the lady's like, the finances, well, yeah, but we got a vacation over here, and this, he's like, no, I just want to, I'm in this box. When they're at work, they're in their work box. The ladies are texting them, calling them. They don't answer because they're in their work box, you know. If they're mowing the yard, they're in the mowing the yard box. But ladies, everything runs together. That's why when you ask her, hey, tell me about your day, you know, buckle up, you know. and I ran into this person, and it's an incredible book, actually, and has helped a lot of people.
All right, I love it, man. I mean, what advice would you have? I mean, maybe a nugget from that book, but what advice would you have? You know, you said, you know, number 3, communication's really like the really big kind of, you know, linchpin here. What advice would you have for, you know, a couple that's struggling and we want to, you know, improve communication? I mean, are there exercises they can do, or are there, you know, what would you recommend?
Well, I do. I have a couple things here. One is, and I've got so many things from so many different authors. Some of them I've thought about. This one I got from a guy, and I can't remember his name, but he says every week a couple ought to have a conference. A conference for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And at the conference, you ask 3 questions. And when they're talking, you can't say anything. So, first of all, what are you concerned about? What are you concerned? What concerns you? And number 2 is, what do you wish? What's one thing you wish for? And the third thing is, what are you willing to do to get there? Those 3 things. But think about it. A lot of times what's bothering the wife, what she's concerned about, the husband's not concerned about that. When you share that, each of you share, okay, well, that's, you know, he's concerned about our finances. He's concerned about losing his job. She's concerned about one of the kids, how he's doing in school. And so that's a really good tool. That's the first thing. The next thing is, this same guy, he said, when you're communicating between the genders, sometimes it's good to use a word picture. Like, for example, you know, you ask a lady, what's wrong? Well, I just don't feel loved. Well, why don't you feel loved? You know, I'm working my butt off. We got food. I just don't feel loved. And so this is an example he used. He can't, you know, he was very successful in his job, and he came home, and his wife said, you know, after a while, I don't feel like you love me. Well, why don't you feel like I love you? You know, I'm doing all stuff. She said, look, when you go to work, you do everything with excellence. I've been to your work. Everything is organized. She's like, look, this home, I'm staying at home with 3 kids. The refrigerator doesn't work. It's leaking water. The dishwasher is broken, and I'm having to wash dishes by hand. The floor's coming up in the living room, and you just walk right by all that, and I'm stuck with these things. And for the first time, he thought, man, it's true. I'm doing things in excellence at work. My wife is struggling at home already. A stay-at-home mom is already difficult. And so, but he learned something from that word picture that he didn't realize. And of course, he jumped right on it, man. He got a handyman over there, fixed everything, and he stayed on top of it. Anytime something was broken, he immediately got on it as quick as he could. And you know, of course, that made her feel loved because he cared about what was important to her.
I like that. So, I mean, basically, we're kind of talking about. I mean, a lot of problems start with miscommunication, right? And a lot of what I'm hearing you say is it's important to validate your partner's concerns, right? One, you got to know what they are, and once you know what they are, then if you care about that person, you want a good relationship, then you got to validate them and show that you're doing something to help, alleviate whatever those concerns are. So I like the idea of a weekly conference. I like that in terms of improving communication between partners. We do it at work all the time. I mean, I've been a teacher. I teach history. I've been a teacher for a long time, and we have meetings about having meetings about meetings, right? We meet all the time, and it's effective. I mean, we do it for a reason, and I know in business they have meetings all the time. So if we care about our jobs, we care about our businesses, and we sit down and we schedule meetings, to make sure all that's running smoothly. Hey, it's a wonderful idea to do it, with your spouse or with your partner. I love that. That's great.
Jake, I was what a lot of couples do, and there's nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with this. They're working hard all day, so they
Mm-hmm.
come home and they just veg on the couch and watch Netflix. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
hey, that's we need that time. But when we're talking about these conferences, we're talking, 15 minutes. 15
Mm-hmm.
minutes where you can learn something about your spouse that you had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
What's concerned? Please tell me what's concerning you. You can say anything you want. I'm not going to interrupt you. um, you know, and then, how can we improve it? What can we do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think we're living together and we're doing all these things, and a lot of people have good marriages,
Mm-hmm.
but if you can communicate on the emotional intimacy scale, it'll go
Mm-hmm.
from good to great.
Mm. I love it. Emotional intimacy being the fourth level of communication, and you said most people don't really get past level two, and I'm sure that's the relationships that are falling apart and whatnot. All right, so communication, man, it's super huge. Not only do you have to, I guess, know, or what your, and this might be more true for men than women, but not only do you need to know what your spouse is concerned about, but you also need to be able to convey what you're concerned about, and if you validate each other and find a common ground, then it goes a long way. I love that. All right, man, what's number four?
All right, my fourth one, I said seven. This has three parts, but
Okay.
I put character qualities you need to be in a healthy relationship.
Okay.
It doesn't matter who you marry, who you are. You have to have these things, and the first one is commitment. And when Trace and I were married, we decided we would never say the word divorce.
Mm-hmm.
But to have a healthy relationship, it's more than just the commitment to stay together.
Mm-hmm.
It's the commitment to grow together. And
Hmm.
I'm shocked by this. Of course, you've been to you go to our church, but every year we put on some incredible marriage conferences. I mean, we stream in conferences that if you went there would cost you $1,000 to get a ticket, to go there, get a hotel. And the church,
Mm-hmm.
we absorb the cost and we put that on.
Mm-hmm.
We have stuff like that all the time, several times a year. And you wouldn't believe, most people won't go.
Hmm.
And what now? I hope they don't hear this, but then what happens? They won't go, and then the next week they're calling me because they have marriage problems. And I get on to them like, man, why are you? Why? If you would have come last week, if you'd have been going these once a year and improve your marriage, and what they tell me is, well, yeah, but we had to work. Well, take off. Do you have
Yeah.
vacation? Do you have personal days?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, it basically, if you end up having to go to a marriage counselor, you're going to pay about $160 an hour,
Mm-hmm.
and that preventive maintenance. And by the way, 80% of marriage counseling doesn't work
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
people their pride gets in the way. The only time they go to marriage counseling is when it's so bad that someone's threatening to leave. So they waited too long. They should have gone 3 years earlier. And
so you think, I mean, in terms of personal development, relationship development, and all that kind of stuff, it's, the old thing, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So you think or the numbers basically show by the time it gets so bad that you go to counseling, it's only 20% chance you're going to pull that thing out, huh?
Well, and that's what my friend, who's a professional licensed counselor who's been doing this for 30 years, that's the stat he gave me. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's like, man, they just let it get so bad. Yeah.
So okay, so the first thing here in terms of and it makes so much, I mean, it just makes so much sense, right? I mean, if you want to be good at anything in life, you want to be a good athlete. Well, I'm going to throw a little joke out here, but hey, Terry, if you want to be a good athlete, the thing you got to do is choose your parents wisely, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Genetics has a whole lot to do with athletics, whole lot to do. But nonetheless, but if you want to be a good athlete, seriously, you got to commit yourself to it. You want to be a runner. Both you and I have run marathons, and you've got to commit yourself to anything you want to be good at, right? Whatever it is in life, and so you're saying, I mean, it makes so much sense. If you want to have a good marriage, you got to commit to it, right? And it's work. It's not easy. It's not just all, butterflies and rainbows, as they say.
Yeah. And, a lot of the, people are worried they're going to get beat up at marriage conferences. Man, some of the ones we stream, they're some of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life, because they're just talking about real life, and you're like, hey, that's us. Well, yeah, it's everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, just your ability, if you learn one or two very important nuggets, it can change your relationship. It really can. Like even the difference thing we started with, if you got to celebrate your differences, that's a game changer for a lot of married couples. If they would do that, that's a game changer.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, it comes with making a commitment, and once you make a commitment and you decide that it's a priority, then you start learning, and you go to the conferences, you learn about things like we need to celebrate our differences and so on and so forth. Maybe that's half the battle right there. So are you finished with character qualities, or are you just getting warmed up on that one?
I have two more.
All right, let's go. All right, yeah, absolutely.
The next one is selflessness.
Okay.
Selflessness. And, it's the greatest problem character-wise in a relationship is that we're selfish. We want what we want. Another great book, Dr. Willard Harley, he wrote His Needs, Her Needs, How to Affair-Proof Your Marriage. And he lists the top needs of a man and the top needs of a woman. Now, you can go online. Dr. Willard Harley, you can take that online. And basically, he was saying that if in a relationship, if you will meet her need, here's the list of them, and to the lady, if you will meet your husband's need, you will never have an affair. You'll never go outside the marriage because you're getting your needs met. And but a lot of times we only look at what my need is and not what their need is. So selflessness, and the last one is humility.
Can I stop and come back to that on selfishness and selflessness and whatnot? I mean, because digging into that a little bit, I mean, on the front end of every relationship, we only really get into relationships because it's something that we want to do, right? I mean, which is to some degree on the front end a selfish act, right? I like this person, they're beautiful, they're funny, they're fun to be around. So on the front end, a lot of it can really be kind of selfish. Would you agree with that? Or, I mean, yeah.
See, and that's what he says. You stay together because your needs were getting met, but after the relationship, a few years down in marriage, for example, things have changed.
Yeah.
For example, one of one of the needs for a man, of course, usually it depends on person, but usually for men, the number one need is sex. Big surprise,
Sure.
right?
Of
Okay.
course.
But one of the top ones is his wife being a recreational companion, just doing things. We used to go play
Yep.
golf together. We used to hike together. Well, once you have kids and all this, everyone's busy. A lot of times she tells him, I don't want to go, but I don't mind if you go. Well,
Right.
I want you to go, and
Mm-hmm.
so think about that, just the stress and the time and just all the stuff you got going on. It can prevent us from meeting the need that was once met.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting that you brought up. Clearly, I think everyone would get right. Like, guys' top need in relationships can be sex, but beyond that, I think that's very overlooked. Is the idea of recreational companionship? I think it's big, and I don't know. I mean, how important do you? I mean, is that an important thing? I mean, what is your opinion on that? I mean, should a guy look to his wife as a recreational companion? Is that a good thing to do, or does it depend on the relationship, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, what Dr. Willard Hart what he says is, just you don't have to do it as much as you used to, but just every once in a while, go get a babysitter, go out there with him, and just make the effort. But the main thing is that many times the ladies, they're just like, well, I have kids, I have all this stuff, I have to get a sitter. The problem is they don't realize it's that big of a deal. Well, I don't care if you go with some of your buddies, but
Right.
if you're out there on a trail, think about this. A lot of things that we did before, that's a great way to reconnect, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're
Sure.
doing something. It's a great way to reconnect, a great way to just get away from things.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, for ladies, their top two is, first of all, financial security.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know that they're going to be taken care of. And number
Mm-hmm.
two is they want their husband to talk to them,
Hmm.
just to talk. And so, but anyway, there's like the top five in each one, and y'all can look that up. But
Sure.
it's really interesting. So, she's not wanting to do things like the recreational companionship like she once did. And we're
Mm-hmm.
busy. We come home from work, we're tired, and we don't feel like talking.
Mm-hmm.
But they're both vital. And again, when you learn that, you can.
Mm-hmm. And then that's where the selflessness comes in, right? Because if we're going back to things you talked about earlier, it's a great idea to have that conference, that weekly conference. And if you're being honest and you're laying out what your needs are, emotional needs or whatever it may be, that's when it becomes important to say, okay, no longer is this about just me and what I want, but let me go out and let me figure out what I need to do to um, fulfill the needs of my partner, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think when you begin to do that kind of stuff, you're able to progress through those levels of communication, and you're going to get to that emotional intimacy level 4. I have a question, Dr. Willard. Who? Someone Tiffany's asking.
Willard Harley,
Harley.
Harley, and he's a clinical psychologist,
Okay.
PhD, and I mean he has counseled with thousands and thousands of couples. And
Okay. Gotcha. All right, man. Thank you. So character qualities, you've got to make the relationship a priority. We've got to be selfless in how we approach our partner. What's the next one?
The next one is humility.
Humility.
If you think about it, most of the arguments we have are stupid. I mean,
Sure.
some of them are big over finances, not having enough money, but a lot of the argument is we get a little bit sideways, and we just don't don't want to give in. We want to be right, and we
Mm-hmm.
want to prove a point.
Mm-hmm.
And if we just had some humility and just say, you know what,
Mm.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it that way.
Mm.
As a matter of fact, I was really bad at that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, I was just, type A person. And finally, I learned this lesson. And one time, Trace and I got in an argument. It's like, I said something I could tell this is going to spiral.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to go. And I was like, hey, I'm sorry. And she kept it up. I'm like, wait. I said, I'm sorry. She said, what? Like, you don't say that. But it now, and I had a professional tell me this: which one should apologize first? And this is what he told me. I was thinking, okay, the man apologizes first because God calls him to lead or whatever. He said, you know what? The one with the more dominant personality, the one with the strong, that person should apologize first. It's the hardest for them to do.
Sure.
But yeah, humility, if you think about pride, the Bible talks about that, that pride is just such a destructive force in our life. And it's a destructive force in our relationships as well.
Sure. I listen to Audible a lot. I've got a little bit of a commute driving into school, and so I was listening to a book on the way today and on relationships, and the author said you can be. It's easy to be right, but then you're alone.
Yeah.
If you've got to win the battles, it's going to make it difficult to maintain a good relationship, huh? I mean, it's at the end of the day, you just have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth winning this battle and losing the war, I guess,
But I ask couples though, they come in, we got this big argument. Okay, what did it start about? Well, we can't remember. No, I want you to remember. I want you to tell me what it, and they start tracing it back, and it was something ridiculous. Now I'm like, now, was that worth where y'all went to? Was it worth it? I mean, you're arguing for 2 days, arguing for 2 days, and it all started because of the tone that he used toward her. And I'm like, we can deal with the tone, we can deal with that, but look where it got you. I mean, you're in my office because you didn't like the way he said that, and so I just think about, again, some things are big, and
Sure.
we have to address those.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the arguments we get, they start off very small, and we just keep chiming in. We have to get the last word. We have to,
I mean, the Bible very plainly tells us that pride comes before fall, right? And if we're applying it to this situation, if it's whether it's a divorce or whether it's a fight or an argument or marital discord, whatever it is, so often you're right, the arguments are over just the most arguments. I mean, sometimes there's legitimate things, right? But so many arguments often start over such little insignificant things, and then one person or the other just doesn't want to let it go, and so you're just saying, number 3 under characteristics here is just have some humility, right? And just kind of let things go. That's good.
Trace and I, we were discussing one time, and our first year, the first year of marriage is pretty good. The second year of marriage, we fought a lot. The third year, we didn't fight at all. And we're looking back on that as we were both going to school, we were both working, and I think the third year, we're just so tired. We don't have the energy to argue with you about that,
Gotcha. Got it, man. Okay, are you ready to move on to your next point?
That was what I had, but I'm willing to talk about anything else.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't think it's rocket science, right? I mean, it's not like this crazy equation that people have to kind of come up with to have a good relationship. I love the fact that you're talking about communication. I love the fact that you're talking about coming together and having conferences every week and so on and so forth. I've got a couple of other questions here that I had for you, but how important and I know this might be different with different personalities and things like that, but I've been reading and studying this topic for a little while, and it seems like we enter relationships sometimes, or not sometimes. I think most of the time we enter relationships because we want closeness and we like the person, and we're and when we begin to come together, we're erasing the distance between us, and you get to you start dating and you want to see each other more, and eventually you want to get married, and then you're removing that distance, and all of a sudden you get so close that sometimes the passion and the intimacy, or I think as the level of comfort goes up, it can diminish the level of passion. Um, from what I understand and from what I've been reading, to what degree is it important um, for couples to have space in a marriage, and what does that look like?
Well, you do need space. It looks different. It looks different for each person. But for
Mm,
example, a couple years ago, I like to fish, so I bought a boat, and Tracy's like, "Hey, you're becoming a workaholic," because the church can be consuming,
sure.
and so I'm out there on my boat usually once a week. Sometimes it's every 2 weeks, and just getting out there, getting in nature does it for me. Um,
Hmm.
Tracy Tracy is different. She needs alone time in a separate way. But so I think it's important, and I think every person is different. So each couple has to figure out, what that looks like for them to keep the healthy balance. And of course, I think a lot of times what needs to happen is the couple needs to get away on their own,
Mm,
and we don't do that when we have kids.
mm,
But let grandparents keep the kids for at least for a Friday night and a Saturday, so you can just. But it's
mm,
amazing when you remove the stress and the kids and all the normal stuff and just get away together. And
mhm,
that, I think that's a big problem. We used to be together all the time by ourselves.
mhm,
Now there's kids, now there's work, now there's all these things. And now what made us close, we don't have anymore. And we have to find a way to recreate that. And just remember, I tell couples all the time, the excuse is always their kids. I'm like, your kids are not the most important thing in the relationship. Your
mhm,
husband or your wife is. I mean,
mhm,
y'all were married before you had kids, so the marriage has to come first. But I'm amazed at how really a lot of times people put their kids almost as idols in their life, and everything revolves around the kids, and every they got
mhm,
them in every sport, and just they're draining their themselves, and really
mhm,
robbing themselves from being able to nurture that.
mhm. All right. So I think what if you got a situation where what if one spouse feels like, and I don't know, and sometimes I wonder, I don't know if it's like a seesaw or how you find balance, but I mean, what about a situation where you've got one spouse and they feel like, they, I mean, there's this balance that needs to be found because between some couples, someone might not want to lose their individuality, or they might be afraid. Um, I'm not talking about a couple that's been married for 30 years, but maybe a newer couple. They're getting together, and one of them's maybe afraid to lose their individuality, and the other one is wanting to close that gap and be closer. How do you deal with something like that? Is that a fatal flaw? Is that something that can be overcome?
Yeah, I think everything can be overcome, but there has to, there
Mm-hmm.
has to be give and take.
Mm-hmm.
There's two people in the relationship, so demanding something doesn't usually work. But I think by individuality, uh, are you talking about like she, if it's the female, she wants to go out with her friends once a night? What individuality are you thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, let me flip it and let me say, like, what if it's a guy and he loves to play, softball, and he plays in a softball league, and that's super important, and it was something he was doing before he, was dating his spouse, and now they're getting married, or maybe they've gotten married, and she wants to spend more time with him, and she feels like you're taking time away from our relationship. You're going 3 nights a week playing softball. And he's like, hey, that's something I've done for, I played baseball my whole life, and now I'm playing softball, and I don't want to give it up. I love it. And so in this case, the guy feels maybe threatened that he's having to give up something that he sees as part of himself. But maybe on that, she wants to spend more time, and it's creating conflict. How do you resolve something? I mean, if they came to you, the scenario that I just said, and the couple comes to you and says, he's like, man, pastor, like, I love playing softball, and I'm with my buddies, and I don't want to give it up. And she's like, I don't have enough time with him, pastor. I need more time with him. What would you tell them? What would you tell these people?
Well, what I would tell him is, you're not married to softball, you're married to her.
Mm.
Again, in the very beginning, we talked about that book, Saving Your Marriage Before You Start.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a chapter in there on developing expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the expectation that he can play softball is not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And she probably wouldn't mind. 3 nights a week is a problem.
Right.
I mean, that's, if you wanted to keep doing that, you should have just played softball and got married, right? It's kind of like I had a guy, and he was a duck hunter, and when it was duck hunting, and his wife, and she's like, look, I did not mind him duck hunting, but he duck hunts every day of the season. And you would know him. I'm not going to say his name. One of our Cajun guys. And I said, well, how long does a duck season last? And I knew about 45 days.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so you go duck hunting every day. And I said, well, you see how there's a problem. Nothing's getting fixed around the house. You're not there. She's dealing with the kids, and you're just, and so, but that I mean, it's not an unrealistic both people should be able to win. He should be able to duck hunt, but it shouldn't dominate his life where it takes away from her. And I think, we made a commitment to get married, so it's us first. And so it's really a balancing, and most of it's common sense.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And it comes back to what you said earlier. It really comes down to one of your recommendations is you've got to make a commitment. You've got to make the relationship a priority. And if that's what you want to do, you want to have a good marriage, you want to be happy after 30 years, you kind of have to do that. I appreciate it, man. I think you laid out a really good plan for people who who care about having a good marriage. And I appreciate everybody jumping on tonight. One of our previous guests was on here, Monica Warren. She was saying she really likes her husband, and they've been married for ages too. So I'm glad to see and hear more and more people are doing well, and they're and I know they do a lot of things together. Actually, they in terms of recreation, they do Ironmans and all that kind of stuff together. But I do have, I guess, 2 more questions or 2 more bits of advice I'd like to close with. Is one, I kind of preface this with divorce, saying divorce rates are up during COVID and whatnot. If you have a couple right now, they're watching right now, maybe the wife, stereotypically the wife is watching, and she's like, man, the marriage, I feel like it's falling apart. He didn't pay attention to me anymore. I don't know what we're going to do. I mean, what advice would you have for that person, man or woman? They feel like the marriage is falling apart. What do they need to do? How can they turn it around? What would be the first step? What would be the first step?
I think the first step is go back to the foundation. Are we committed to this? Are we committed to this? Are we committed to this relationship? Mm-hmm. And if so, what do we need to do to make it better? And if you need to go to a counselor, there's no shame in getting outside help. There's no. That's a whole lot better than having divorce with kids and all that. So that's the first thing is let's make sure we're both committed to this. And if so, are we willing to do whatever it would take to get our relationship back to where it needs to be? And that's the sad thing, is that a lot of times both people aren't. But that's the key. If two people, and I tell people, if two people are committed, there really is nothing you can't overcome, and that includes infidelity and other things. I've seen it happen. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. And it takes time and forgiveness and things. But that's the first point, is to, are we committed, and where are we going to go to get the help we need? Are we going to read a book together, or are we going to go to a weekend to remember conference?
Right.
We go talk to our pastor. But I think it's just like this, to go to AA, join. They make you admit that you have a problem. You have to admit that you have a problem, that your relationship is faltering, that it's not where you want it to be. If you don't have that realization, you'll never improve it.
Okay, so if someone's watching, if they're in that boat, and whatnot, what can they do? Can they reach out to the church? Can they reach out to you? What would you suggest?
Yeah, absolutely. And we most probably in February, around Valentine's Day, we'll be hosting another marriage conference.
Yeah.
I gave some really good books today, but I mean, you're welcome to put the church website on, or the church phone, and be happy to meet with people. And if nothing else, I can give you some resources that you can check out to help yourself.
Cool. So if any of you are watching and you're frustrated, you're worried that maybe, look, if you're worried, unfortunately, I know this from experience, if you're worried that your marriage is falling apart and you think it might be heading towards divorce, if you're thinking about it and you're worried about it, it probably is on that road. So Terry already mentioned that I guess the sooner you do something about it, the better, because you can get to that point of no return, and it's really hard to get back. So reach out to me if you need those resources. Reach out to me, message me. I will put you in touch with Terry and the resources that he's recommending here tonight. I do have one more question, but before I do that, this is just kind of something, just sort of I'm a history guy, and I know one thing. Let me throw a plug for the church out there. If you are looking for a church, Terry's my pastor, Family Life in Sugar Land, Texas. If you're looking for a church, a family church, a church that just opens, is welcoming to anybody and everybody, just look up Family Life Church anywhere on the west side of Houston, and it's a great place to be. So check that out. But Terry, one of the things that you do, Terry, and I don't think I've told you this, but I mean, I've taught history for a long time, but your sermons, man, I love all the history and the background and the context that you bring to your sermons, and I really appreciate that. I'm sure other people do as well. So this is kind of a spin-off of that and sort of what you do. But I mean, do you think marriage is more difficult now? I mean, I'm looking at the context of marriage right now as opposed to maybe 50 years ago or 100 years ago. I mean, is it more difficult now? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It's really difficult to say, because a lot of times we think, oh, we have it hard today. Then you look back in history and like, no, they had it worse.
Sure.
I think today, the difference today is in America is, if you're not happy, you can leave.
Right.
Some parts in history where you just didn't do that. You stayed with it. If they were treating you bad or whatever, you just stayed with it. But I will say this for sure: the pace of our society, the pace, man. I talk to people, I'm like, you got to cut your pace down, man. Y'all are just killing it. I'm tired listening to your schedule. I mean, I just heard I'm exhausted, and so the pace has, just the rapid pace of everything. You would think that technology would help us save time, but I don't know. It just, the pace the just being the broken down marriage isn't highly looked upon like it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's no big deal. You leave, you divorce, whatever. It's no big deal. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the institution of marriage has eroded. The
Mm-hmm.
importance of it has eroded,
Mm-hmm.
and just the fast pace of our society. I mean, it's hard as comparing generations. Is Michael Jordan better? Is Kobe better?
Mm-hmm.
Or LeBron better? Well, they played in different generations,
Mm-hmm.
but for sure, marriage is under assault today.
Sure.
And divorce rate has gone up from what it was way back tremendously.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I see it every day. I see the struggles every day with couples that I talk with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important as we're wrapping up here. I think it's important to point out, and maybe you could speak to this more than me, but from what I understand, what I read, a lot of people think that they're going to get a divorce, and they think that there's some sort of relief, like my marriage is bad, so I'm just going to get out of this thing, and maybe there's some situations where you absolutely have to, and maybe it's an abusive situation or something like that, but I think people are looking for a relief that maybe they don't end up finding on the other side. Is that something that you have seen where people think, oh, I'm going to get a divorce and it's going to make everything better, and because I think if you look at the studies, if you look at the numbers, unless you fix what's going on with yourself, it's probably not innately going to make things better. And I think you're frozen a little bit there.
Casey,
I
okay.
might have. Okay.
Well, yeah, I was able to hear you, and I think
Okay.
that let me put it this way: I can't tell you how many guys I know that left their wives for a different woman or whatever, younger, whatever it is.
Sure.
And to a man, they've all come back to me and said, "Man, I didn't realize how good I had it. What a mistake that was." And so, again, the more water you have under your bridge, the more luggage you're carrying.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't fix yourself, it's always easier to fix where you're in right now than to go through all that heartache and then go to another relationship.
Sure. And then you're just bringing that baggage, and you still got to deal with that baggage. Well, not only that, you've got to deal with the original problem plus some extra baggage anyway, right?
Yeah. So it's always easier to fix what you have. It's always, and it's worth the work. It really is.
Good stuff, man. I guess the last thing is really just the last question I had for you is I asked if there were if a married couple is struggling, what would you suggest? But what about a couple, they're dating, they're trying to figure out if they want to get married, all that kind of thing. And I know you said your buddy had like a premarital counseling kind of thing, but what would you suggest to someone who's trying to find that right mate? Maybe they're dating, maybe they're trying to figure out if we should go forward with marriage or not. What advice would you have for that couple? How do they know?
Yeah, I'm trying to look something up right now. What I would do is you have to get with some type of a program or something. Mm-hmm. You just need to answer all the questions. There's no perfect person, but you got to make sure you're compatible, and so there, Dennis Rainey, he wrote a book called Preparing for Marriage, and that's actually what I use. I take couples through, or I have someone in my church take them through, and I mean, it just, when you're done with that book, you will have answered the questions and solved the questions, or you'll figure out, okay, we have a problem here. But you just have to make sure. Again, it's more than the fireworks. It's more than sex. It's more than physical. You got to live with that person. Do we have the same faith? What's our outlook on finances? What I was abused as a child. How am I going to deal with that before I go into? I meet people that they get married and one of them was sexually abused and the other one didn't even know. I mean, that's like, they were embarrassed about it. Well, and again, I'm not making bad about anyone. I'm just saying it's like this stuff we've got to deal with it, or it's going to cause problems in our relationship. So preparing for marriage, that's a great one. There's other ones too, but any resource that is going to help you to just talk about the important things.
Good stuff, man. And we've got people. One of my another former guest on the show was asking for a book list. So I want to put together that list, and I know you've shared a lot of things, and I've taken some notes, and I'm going to put that in the notes on the show. But I love it. The one thing I don't have, and I have several books that you mentioned that I'm going to recommend, or I'm gonna go back and put in the comments later on. But you mentioned your buddy had this program. Does he still have that program, the premarital counseling program? Is that available?
He has the program. I have it somewhere. I can't remember what it's called. He was actually out at Bethel in Redding, California.
Okay.
And he was, obviously that's a large church, and he did all that for him. I kind of lost touch with him. I don't know if he's still there, but I had the program, and it was pretty good. So maybe we can add that to the list as well.
Yeah, so I'll compile a list and just some resources for people who are both in marriage and they don't want to struggle. They want to have a good relationship, or people who are heading into relationships and marriage. And I'll put those resources together for everybody. But look, Terry, man, I really appreciate you coming on again tonight. And I don't know, man, I'm gonna have to get you a frequent flyer T-shirt or something. Bring you on every quarter or something like that. You always drop lots and lots of value bombs and great things that are really helping and change. That's what this whole show's about. And I know that's what you've dedicated your whole life to, is just, one, leading people to Jesus, and two, changing people's lives. So I appreciate what you do, brother. And I appreciate you coming on here tonight and sharing everything with us.
Yes, sir. Maybe on the book list too, maybe I'll plug myself here for a minute. I did write a book on parenting. And if any of you have young kids, it's really a practical help, to help guide you in your parenting process.
I love it. In fact, my cousin Tiffany has been a frequent watcher. So Tiffany, I appreciate you hanging out with us here tonight. And she does have a young son. So I'll get that book from you, and I'll send that on to her. But yeah, Terry's got some really some great resources out there. We'll make those resources available for everybody. And I appreciate you again, man. What's the name of your book?
It's called Packing for Life, A Parent's Guide to Success.
Packing for Life, A Parent's Guide for Success. I love it, man. I love it.
It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble's digital copy. If you come to visit Family Life, you get a free copy.
I love it. I love it. Hey, and look, if you're looking for a church on the west side of Houston, Family Life is a wonderful, great place to be. Terry and his wife Tracy, I've been good friends with them for ages and ages now. They have a wonderful church over there. They're doing great things, changing lives and building the kingdom of God. So I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for coming on. Thank you all for watching tonight, and y'all take care. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone as well next week. All right, brother. Good night.
Good night, man.